Right. What is up, PartnerUp? If you're watching on video, Isaac, before I have to mention this, I got on the call with someone today and he said, I always laugh at your dozens of viewers on YouTube comment. So just FYI, there is someone out there that appreciated my commentary on that. You would see the destruction after PLX behind me. I'm still setting up my podcast studio, but otherwise, Isaac, holy cow, we're back post PLX. How you feeling, man?
Good. I still don't quite get the destruction PLX behind you. Like, why would there be furniture in your studio after PL? Did you steal something from the Airbnb that we hosted the event at and bring it home?
Oh my gosh. No, so we decided at the household it was a good time, since I was going to be out of the podcast studio all week, to move everything out of the garage so we could resurface the garage and put it in the podcast studio.
Oh
And
my
the garage
gosh.
is not done yet. So that's a very irrelevant way of opening the show. What a cold open, right?
Yeah, no, this is an episode I'm really looking forward to because I always have the most fun when there's people that I already have a rapport with. It's the most laid back. So there's few people that I have better rapport with than my brother, Levi Morehouse. And Levi, I mean, you're a phenomenal entrepreneur, and we're going to get into a lot of that stuff and kind of how you stumbled into, I guess, the partnership strategy. But I think we should start with this. We should talk about our first exit. You and I started a company together.
Oh, wow.
We had a big exit in 2003, I think it was. We sold the company for 2 Nextel car chargers. And not kidding. Somebody literally bought they bought the company name. That was the only thing we had that was worth anything. But here's the reason I bring it up, Levi, because I realized we both should have learned then and there that partnerships can make or break you. Because if you'll recall, this was a company that we did installed telecommunications cables, like fiber optic cables and Cat5 cables for businesses back before everybody was on Wi-Fi. And part of the reason that we left the company that we both work for doing that to start our own was because we thought we had a partnership. We had this really successful electrical company, and the owner was like, hey, we get people asking us to bid on these, telecom cables all the time, and we don't really do that. You guys do that. We'll feed you all the jobs. So we're like, cool. Instantly we got demand, and then we'll just service them. And I don't know, we didn't have anything formalized with them, and they didn't end up feeding us any business. So I ended up doing landscaping for a family member using a telecommunications truck. What should we have learned from that, Levi?
The partnership channel is the way to go. We should have found more of them, and run with it. We should have learned a lot of things from that. I will say too, the 2 car chargers, Jared was laughing at it. I could tell he wasn't all that impressed. But I will say, as in any good M&A deal, I got double the original offer. So it was originally a single car charger, and I got us both one out of the deal. So I did squeeze a lot more out of that than was originally on the table. No, it would have been. That's a great point. Great partnership connectivity there. I just looked it up too. The website's live. The name still lives on, Isaac. So we're.
Are you serious?
There's something. It's still there.
So he got a good deal out of that. Got some longevity. So I mean, you have had this entrepreneurial, I don't know, impulse for as long as I can remember. I mean, I remember you getting angry when you were 16 because you were damaged your car, and you had a spreadsheet where you had your net worth worked out, and your net worth went down because your car was damaged, and you were real upset about it.
I think it went negative was why I was really upset.
So I would love to know, if I would have told you, back when you were starting your company, which started as a service company and then became a software company, Ceteris, if I would have told you back when you started it that you needed to be thinking about B2B partnerships, B2B software partnerships, what would you have said?
Yeah, wouldn't have even crossed my mind. I don't think I'd say you're crazy. I just wouldn't know what you were talking about. It wasn't top of mind. It was about scraping and hustling and landing each customer individually, proving the merits of what you're doing, customizing, tailoring, marketing, and attracting the customers one by one. So it would have been a new idea to me, not something that I'd thought about as much as I should have. But again, not also something I wouldn't say never, or I'd say interesting, like probably worth kind of thinking about.
You basically did everything for small businesses initially, right? So accounting, bookkeeping, financial reporting, that was kind of and it was like all hands on, just you to start with, and you built a team. Like, just can you walk through, just give like a transition? I know Jared doesn't like these. He doesn't like chronologies. I actually love chronological stories.
Yeah. So I'll give the quick the chronological story, and Jared can like tune out for a minute. But, to your point, like I'm a entrepreneur. Jared left the screen, so he's not going to be bored by this.
I'm just kidding.
No, I'm kind of the entrepreneur by heart, as you mentioned. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Kind of had that itch. I call it the itch, the entrepreneurial itch that I think a lot of people have. And somewhere in high school, like that just kind of clicked in. I'm not sure why, but I just knew I wanted to build something, do something. Had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went to school, the local college, to get a business degree, to kind of figure out business. I figured I should know business if I want to build a business. I had an accounting class I had to take, thinking I was going to hate it. And I found out then and there that I'm a total nerd, and I actually loved the class, and it really resonated. Enjoyed accounting. Got an internship at a big accounting firm, a nice accounting firm in the area. Worked there for 2 years after school, after getting hired. The entrepreneurial itch wasn't going away. I actually loved accounting. I loved the firm. It was competitive, aggressive, all those things, but it wasn't scratching the itch. So I quit the firm and went and worked at and started 3 different small businesses. One of which was Novius that Isaac referenced, that we sold for an amazing 2 car chargers. But in those experiences, I learned a couple things. One was that those businesses were not going to get as big and as impactful as I wanted. I really wanted to put that dent in the universe. I wanted something that could be built at a nationwide scale and just have massive impact. And secondly, I learned that as a small business owner in a local small business, you spend an inordinate amount of your time on the back office, on your accounting, on your payroll, on your, financial reporting. You either spend too much time on it, where you should be hiring people, selling, delivering a product or service, or you don't spend the time on it and you're exposed to compliance risk and getting off track with the IRS. And I saw all those problems at those businesses I was in. And the light bulb moment kind of went off when I said, wow, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's Naval or one of those guys says, the things that you do for fun that are a hobby, when you find out other people don't find those things are fun, is like when you're kind of onto something magical. And the time I realized most people don't actually enjoy modeling their business at night and putting it into a spreadsheet and running graphs and analytics, I was like, well, they don't like it, they hate it, and they wish they had it. And so the light bulb went off, and I said, why isn't my business to be the back office for small business and let you do that stuff outsourced in the cloud, remote, paperless? Today, that stuff sounds like nothing. Back in 2008, that was kind of cutting edge. Most people were doing these things on their computer, locally, printing stuff out, printing checks. A bookkeeper might come to the office and like literally come in and share files on your computer where you couldn't use it while they had it for a week doing some updates. So it was very clunky. So we were kind of a cloud-based back office service business. To your point, it was just me. I started it in the back of a pole barn, electrical contractor's office, where I rented an office with a folding chair for like about $100 a month, and got it running. Essentially over time, really built it into more things, which we can talk about or not. But to the point I think you were getting at, Isaac, is initially I would do anything, and that being the back office for small business meant everything. So we did the accounting, financial reporting, taxes, the stuff that made a lot of sense. And we did a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. We would like add somebody to their cell phone contract and then call, like it was Nextel at the time, and like argue about the bill because the business owner didn't like how much they paid for cell phones or whatever. So we kind of really did a little bit of everything and anything people wanted.
Levi, did you realize the degree to which you were in inherently a partner function? Like, so basically you are interoperating with these various, providers of small business services, be it technology, hardware, software, whatever. You're in this inherently intermediate state where you need to have a relationship with both the, client and vendor. But I bet in the beginning, you didn't view the vendor for your client the same way that you view that vendor now. You're just like, I got to deal with this person. It's an expense or a thing.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point, Jared. And I hadn't even thought of that coming into this discussion, but I think it's actually a really interesting point. So the cloud for small business was pretty new in 2008. You know, there were some pretty good cloud technologies for individuals and even for enterprise, but the small business space hadn't really been impacted much.
Was QuickBooks Online even a product in 2008? No, right?
It was, but it was horrible. You couldn't use it.
It was
So when I
garbage,
started,
right.
I tried and I couldn't, so I used desktop, and I had to put it in the cloud, like hosted on some awful remote desktop. And I actually found a way to hack it using Dropbox, which was brand new at the time. And I could sync a backup file of QuickBooks, and then between two of my employees, like we could, if we weren't in it at the same time.
Well, wait, Dropbox in 2008, 9, 10?
Yeah, it was early Dropbox. Google Drive, like Google Workspace now, but it was Google Apps at the time, was like brand new. So I was kind of cutting edge on that stuff. And one of the first things I did when I started this was I said, I want to be cloud, paperless, remote, which again was kind of revolutionary, but I had to build that tech stack out of a bunch of existing software. And at the time, none of them had thought about partnerships at all. They all sold to individual customers only. Like Intuit, when they did, I did finally go to QuickBooks Online, probably 2010, 2011. And I had so many accounts on my login, they'd never seen it. They'd never in their life seen it. They're like, you have, like, what are you doing over here?
Right. Is this legal?
They had no accounting channel. They had no partnership channel. They had no way to sell in bulk through a person. And I was essentially bringing them accounts. I was moving people from desktop to QuickBooks Online in mass. We became the biggest user of QuickBooks Online in the world. We may still be today.
No, to this day, you know, I'll occasionally get a stray piece of mail from way back when, like people will send stuff to the wrong for Praxis, from the Praxis original address, and it will be addressed to Ceteris as like the account owner, and then Praxis as like care of Praxis, something like that. Cause like it was your QuickBooks account. There was no like managing for other people, none of that stuff. Yeah. I remember all that crazy stuff. Cause we were one of your clients, and this would have been a couple years later, 2013 when we got started. But yeah, even then there was a lot of stuff that you were basically just piecing together. And like, my life as a client was great. It was super easy. I didn't have to worry about anything, but I can't imagine the ops on the back end, the stack that you would cobble together.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I mean, to the credit of all of these platforms, Intuit has a phenomenal partner channel now through accountants and, other tech businesses as well, but portals and reporting and pricing and rev shares and the whole thing. It's amazing, but it was nothing. Same with Gusto. I was like one of the very first accountants when they had one state open and helped them, same thing there. And they then went to an accountant portal, which was really nice. And then a few years later, they did an entire partnership team that has an advisory council. And, they've done it like phenomenally well. And I think it's a huge driver of growth for them. Bill.com was the same. Expensify was the same. So a lot of these guys that are now huge into the partnership channels were not at all at the time. Like, didn't even know how to accommodate the same email address being on two accounts, let alone 200 or 2,000 as we would get to down the road.
So you're in this position where you need to deliver solutions to your customers. How did you, because I think this would be really interesting to some of the people listening who work in partnerships with these companies. What was your decision-making process for choosing which tech you wanted to work with? Like, why did you choose QuickBooks? Why did you choose Gusto? What factored into that calculus? What was going through your head when you're looking at and comparing these? Because there's some lock-in, right? Once you start using them with your clients, the change costs are high. Your reputation with your clients is kind of on the line a little bit, that these tools that you're building, your services on, and eventually your products as well, you're kind of tied up with them. I would love you to walk through the factors involved in picking the different tech that you wanted to build your company around and the ecosystems you wanted to play in.
Yeah. So it was, again, early especially, it was a massive, massive decision. And didn't know anything, hadn't had any experience. And now if I do it, it's much more iterative. I understand the industry. There's a lot out there. But back then there was kind of your all-in-one solution. So I'm a huge believer in this bundling and unbundling cycles. And I was starting this business in a massive unbundling cycle where the way you wanted to go was unbundled and integrated. And I didn't know that. So there were some options that were all one thing. You could have bought a package that had payroll, accounting, payables, all this stuff in one package. It tended not to. So I didn't go with it because of some of the criteria that I'll give you, but it had to be cloud-based, truly cloud-based. Back in 2008, there was a lot of stuff that was cloud, but it was really desktop software sitting on a server somewhere that you could access through like a web connect of some sort, a remote desktop. That to me was not cloud. I wanted true cloud software. I wanted it to talk to each other. It needed to be automated. I needed not to be doing double entry with a payable system and an accounting system and a payroll system and whatnot. And then again, at the time, I wasn't charging nearly enough, and pricing mattered a ton. And in most cases, I was absorbing the software cost and then, charging something beyond. So really needed it also to be subscription pricing. I couldn't pay, a giant annual license fee. I had to pay monthly subscription pricing that could ratchet up based on usage or based on the level of something. So I could start very cost effectively and then grow into something more expensive as I went. Once I got scale, things changed. The economics, we had, some leverage. We were a great partner for these guys, so we could work things out that, really helped our customers and were great for the platform partner as well. But early on, that was kind of the decision.
It's amazing the businesses that get created because of a lack of attention to the very things that you said were important to you. Like if you look at, to me, the story of the Xero ecosystem, which I'm sure you're at least tangentially familiar with because of QuickBooks.
That was in the mix when I chose QuickBooks Online. So that was absolutely in the mix.
And if you look at the difference between the two businesses, I think objectively the only major difference is that Xero went all in on agencies as their primary customer, right? Early, and that resulted in probably one of the greatest channels of the past 20 years being emergent in SaaS, at least. I mean, HubSpot and Xero I'd put as my 1-2 punch in terms of like agency channel, right? And what Xero fundamentally did is they helped accountants build recurring revenue. That was their objective. Like that's really what they did. And I noticed that because I started seeing accounting firms that were Xero accounting firms get acquired by other Xero accounting firms. And I'm like, this doesn't happen. No one buys accounting firms. No one rolls up accounting firms because their cash flow restarts every year, right? You get paid once and then it's over. And then it's like, oh shoot, whatever happened to that client? But instead of turning into a recurring service and then ironically having access to their books, you could kind of more accurately predict the business. Like, well, 30% of these clients are definitely leaving because I manage their books. Like they're definitely leaving. They're not going to be around in a year. So like it created this predictability, and that's very much the same story with HubSpot. But Isaac, I think you wanted to hop in there.
I want to get to the moment where you've sort of figured out, okay, we've got to productize somehow. That I've got to go from a service business to, what did you identify as the layer that was missing in this existing stack? Okay, you can set up for your clients, QuickBooks, and you can set up Gusto, and you can set up all these things. What was missing from the stack that made you say there's an actual software, there's a product play here?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and it kind of goes back to that same theme I had when I had 3 small kind of local businesses that I had been working and whatnot, was that the impact opportunity was just massive. And as a pure service, purely leveraging third-party technology and integrating it and wrapping it with a managed service around it was going to become limiting in terms of the number of people we'd had to hire. So we grew consistently. We hit the Inc. 5,000. We always doubled every year. It was always our goal. But really, I could see that was coming to an end. Like if I'm just going to purely be a service business, the 100% growth is going to start becoming 50 and 30. They're like, great, solid. But I'm like, I think there's a bigger opportunity. There's 28 million small business owners, and we're serving a couple hundred of them. And like, it's just desperately needed to provide something like this. And I wanted to really give it a go. So then I said, what is missing? How do you get there? And each of these unbundled pieces did their part really, really well. And they had a lot of automation. They had a phenomenal interface and very easy to use. Small business owner is still overloaded with using it right, integrating it right, wiring it together. There was still manual components. When some automation would break or some connectivity didn't exist, you had to do some pieces. So we'd done enough of this to realize there was kind of 2 reasons to go this route. One was the automation of the accounting itself. We realized if we standardize processes, you can not only get more efficient with your people, but you can develop automation bots that do a lot of what those people do. So what your bookkeeper does in your software, you could automate a lot of that. So that was a reason to invest in technology of our own that didn't really exist around this small business ecosystem. It wasn't big enough for RPA. It wasn't, using Oracle or SAP and, hundreds of people doing the same thing every day that you could put RPA in. So we had to develop some automation for small business. And the second piece was on the reporting side. We really felt that small business owners they fly blind. The best case, they see how they're doing against themselves historically. And we wanted to let them see how they're doing against their peers in real time. So if you owned, we ended up focusing a lot on franchise restaurants, franchisees. If you owned a Jimmy John's and you wanted to see how's my store doing, it's nice to know how am I doing versus last year or last month. But it's really cool when you say, how am I doing versus 400 of my peers last month that ended 3 days ago? Oh my gosh, this expense is too high. I've got to bring that down. Or sales is down for everybody, so I shouldn't feel personally bad about that. Like, that was information that we had started to say, this is a huge need. We were spending ungodly amounts of hours putting it into spreadsheets, combining the data, PDFing it. We did everything scrappy, bootstrappy. So I said, if we could automate that, build a portal, build an interface that lets that small business owner have benchmarked financials, forecasts, all kinds of other things, that would be cool. So automating a lot of the people work and benchmarking the financials.
You were super early with that insight, because this kind of falls into what now I think is like second party data, right? Which is there's strong network effects around it, first of all. And it's like this really interesting new, I mean, it's not necessarily new, but you're starting to see it be used in new ways. So obviously with the, cross beams and the reveals in the partner tech space, it's, hey, let two different companies compare notes and see this type of data that's the overlap data. Here's what we have in common, and let's look at this. But here with benchmarking, it's something similar. It's like, hey, if you join our network, you make the network more valuable and you get the value of everybody that's already in the network. So really strong network effects. And there's something, so it taps into this human, like everyone wants to know how they're doing compared to everyone else, right? Whether that's good or bad, sometimes it's bad, but it taps into that in a way. Databox is doing this right now incredibly well.
Partner-led startup of the year, by the way.
Benchmarking, like that's right. Partner-led startup of the year, Databox. And this is one of the reasons, right? This is one of the reasons, because when you're using Databox, you're not just getting the standalone utility of being able to see all your marketing metrics, but you get to, hey, I'm willing to share mine in exchange for seeing everybody else's. And then you get to see, where do you fit? And then you get to, as a CMO, you get to go to your board. And when they're like, how come our numbers aren't better? You can be like, compared to all of our peers, we're in the 90th percentile on social reach and engagement. So our content investment paid off, right? Otherwise, they don't really know how to look at that. And so I remember when you were kind of developing this, and if I recall, I could be remembering wrong, but it started as, once you figured out that franchise owners were a better market for you because they have multiple units. So you onboard them once and it's basically the same for all 5 of their Jimmy John's, let's say. I remember you starting to realize they want to know location by location. They want to compare just to their own locations. Mm-hmm. How come this one bar is spending way more on liquor on Tuesday nights than everybody else? Maybe one of our bartenders is sip stealing, right? Like literally stuff like that. And then you have this insight, wait a minute, we're building a network. We can let them compare to each other. I think that was very early. I think that was a very powerful insight that you were onto.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's powerful and compelling. And most importantly, like, our mission was to empower small business entrepreneurs. And that was a way to do that differentiated that they truly couldn't get from their traditional bookkeeper or anywhere else, literally. So it was really cool tool, very, very powerful.
Did you know how important that was? Like, at the time, you're like, benchmarking, this is interesting. Did you realize there was a cumulative network effect that the interest compounds over time? Or you're like, this is just a cool feature? And there's no trick answer here. It's just like, sometimes you don't realize the genius of the thing that you do to get you from point A to point B. And it's like, actually, the genius of point A to point B was actually to point, X. Like, there's actually a lot more to get out of that in the long tail than there is in the short term. So it might've been beneficial to you to sell it, hey, benchmarking. And it's like, actually, it only gets more valuable the more users. This is a long-term play. How do you think you approached your first time experiencing some compound interest in your business as a network effect? What was your reaction to that then versus looking back on it like, shit, I had a tiger by the tail, or like, oh no, I played my cards right?
Yeah. So So I'll wind it to a part of the story that's really, really, I think, interesting. So when I realized that I needed to do something bigger, the service business things tapped out. I had a bookkeeping company. And I'm like, the way I need, it's really sexy. Believe me, people are begging to invest in this thing.
It's a really, really sexy business.
But I'm like, I need to raise from venture capitalists at software multiples to make this thing make sense. And so I spent almost a year embarrassing myself in front of people. But one of the things I found in that journey was Fred Wilson used to post every single day his AVC blog. And I'm a rabid consumer of all these things that I think are whatever. I've been educated so much from these kind of people, so I appreciate them. But one of his posts talked about what they invest in. And I knew nothing about VC. I didn't know the term VC. I grew up in Southwest Michigan. Like, VC was not a thing that existed. You didn't know anybody that did it, never heard of the space. But I read this, and I think he had 10 different attributes of a company that would be investable by VC. And one of them was a network effect, which I had no idea what it was. So I looked into it, and it's like Facebook has the network effect. Every friend that goes onto the system makes the system that much stronger. And you want to tell your friends because then your system's stronger. And I could solve a lot of I had MRR, I had recurring revenue. I had done a lot of things that checked off the boxes. I don't remember the rest of the 10. The network effect is what stands out. But the network, I'm like, how do you get a network effect in bookkeeping? Like, this is a service that is done. It's a very fragmented service. And that benchmarking was to solve that so I could more effectively actually raise money for a bookkeeping business. I had to make it into an investable institutional capital, VC investable business, and it had to have that angle. That happened to overlay with a couple really smart, educated, awesome entrepreneur customers I had that were kind of begging for cool new things. 95% of my customers in small business never would have thought of it. But the 5% were like pushing to make their business better. And they're like, how do I stack up? Like, how do I compare to other people? Hey, you work with other guys. Like, how am I doing against them? And so it was a combination of saying I needed the network effect. And so kind of pairing those together, by the time I built it, Jared, I had it in mind that this is why I could get a VC to put tens of millions of dollars into a bookkeeping company, was because it did have something unique, a way to lock in value, a way to build value over time by the network growing and whatnot. It proved not to be as good of a network effect as Facebook, but it's pretty damn good.
Right. There's value that's accretive over time and defensibility that over time, enhances resiliency, that I think a lot of SaaS founders, or even partnerships people, like, they're not exposed to these systems level first principles as much whenever you're working, a reseller deal or an agency thing or an individual integration. It's like, look, these fundamental principles were true back then and they're still true today. Right. We're talking early 2010s here. We're not talking, 2019, and a lot's changed in the past decade. So I think it's a really interesting insight that you picked up on it then. And it's more true now today than it's ever been. Right. Like, network effects is one of the only 4 defensible mechanisms left in all of SaaS. So
as you transition, you raise venture capital, you get the product going where you've got, a much more scalable thing. When did you kind of come upon the realization that your best distribution mechanism, your best way to get to serve these small businesses was not to sell to them directly, but to go through people that they're already working with? And tell me about like that discovery process. Cause I remember kind of watching that happen in real time. And I'm like a marketing, branding, consumer facing sort of guy. I remember finding that like sort of sad. Like, oh, you're not trying to talk to small business owners anymore. It's way more fun to try to talk to them. Now you're talking to a network of like accountants or something that they're working with, like that indirect route. How did you stumble into that? And what did you learn along the way?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So kind of on 2 fronts, we went down that path. The first was just purely what I call leverage distribution, where I just want a channel to sell. I want to get either pushed upon a big group of customers all at once, or I want to get introduced in a positive way to a big group of customers to gain traction. And even before we had the product fully built out, we were serving a lot of these people in these niches. So we had niche expertise and, so within these franchise brands, but we learned that the franchisor was an amazing partner. that they are looking for great solutions to provide to their franchisees. And if you can prove, you usually have to prove, it's usually hard. Like they have us, it's not just, hey, you're here and you'll pay me something, I'm going to introduce you to everybody. It's like they're very stringent about allowing anyone to go market to or sell to or be promoted to their franchisees. So you usually have to grind out getting your first couple. And then if they would come with you and say, these guys are amazing, then you could really get that buy-in. But going through the franchisor to the franchisees was a 10X. Again, it took us from a little small business to something that could truly hit the hockey stick like crazy. So that was phase one. And that to me was just purely a distribution channel, using leverage distribution to get to more customers at once, get that flywheel going. The second was a combination of leverage distribution and technology. And that is where we actually we realized after being in the market for a long time, like a lot of small business owners have a horrible accounting experience. It's like one of the things they hate the most about their business, almost largely disappointed with what they're getting service wise. So like picking up, it's like getting, shooting fish in a barrel to go get people to sign up for an accounting service that's standard, automated, available all the time, just like basic things like that. With that said, we did run into some of the best business owners actually already had an amazing accountant. Like there are really good accountants out there. Unfortunately, the vast majority of businesses aren't served by them, but the ones that are, that's an amazing relationship. And I learned, like, I don't want to break up that relationship. They've got a trusted professional that's been with them as they've built an awesome business. But I also don't want to lose that customer. I don't want them to lose out on having the benchmarks we just talked about. I don't want that awesome accountant that's a highly trained professional to spend their time doing mundane data entry that I've built automation to do. So I said, what if we made the accountants, the accounting firms, a distribution channel? What if they were a part of our partner network? And in that case, we could stand up technology. We could private label the platform as their firm and allow them to take advantage of our automation, of our front end platform, and all of those kind of things. And then they could still be that amazing professional working with their clients, but with a whole better tool set kind of at their disposal.
Levi, how long of your and Isaac's relationship have you just been ahead of Isaac on everything?
Always.
Pretty much always. No, not baseball. He surpassed me at about 9 when I was like 11, and that was he went way off and beyond. No, in a million things, he's way beyond.
No, I had to say it's really remarkable that like you independently experience a partner transformation of your business, and like, unbeknownst to you, the lexicon that Isaac Morehouse would create later on, right? Partner pilled. Like at that stage, you were basically partner pilled, whether or not you associated yourself with like other industry professionals in the partnerships profession. I mean, I think that's an amazing inflection point. And then, looking at the future now, you think very differently about that conversation that we opened the convo with, right? But Isaac, I didn't mean to stab you too hard there. Just be playing. I said you'd be the one making fun of me today.
No, this is 100% true though. I mean, we bring on my older brother. We know I've got to take some shit at some point, but no, I mean, Levi has been, and it's actually been great for me because he's been anywhere from 1 to 5 years ahead of me in everything that he's done, like starting a company, going through, having kids, whatever. And so I get to kind of watch him go through. And then when it's my turn, I'm like, help me.
You get to watch me take all the arrows.
I know that you were thinking strategically, and it's not like you just accidentally stumbled into this. I don't want to mischaracterize, but there's an element of it reminds me of what we were talking to Andrew Gazdecki, where he like suddenly realized that he had all this demand from these agencies who were going and using his technology to sell to their clients. And he was like, oh, that's a better strategy. They can go sell it to 10 or 20 people at once instead of one at a time. And you kind of having this realization with accounting firms, but I love what you said that like there's a lot of firms that aren't doing a very good job. And so small businesses aren't getting great service. Those firms, you're perfectly comfortable basically replacing them because they're not creating enough value for their customers. And by doing this, you force the whole industry to level up, right? Like, but when you identified the ones that are doing a great job, that you recognized, I would rather work with them than fight against them. I don't want them to see me as a threat. So how can I make them see me as an asset? How can I make their lives easier and let them realize they don't have to be afraid of software replacing their job, their services, but that we can make their job better and help them make more money. And that's that like positive sum ecosystem thinking that we hear all about with the best in the space. That's Salesforce saying every dollar we sell, we want our partners to make $9 or whatever, right? Like I love that recognition that, hey, this isn't for everybody. I'm perfectly fine putting the crappy ones out of business and replacing them with software if they're not doing anything. But those who are crushing it, I want to help them level up and they'll help us level up.
Well, it actually, I mean, I love that framing, and I don't disagree with it. But I really, and it's cheesy, it's super cheesy, but it's just the way I am. Like, I truly had that business to empower small business entrepreneurs, and almost everything I focus on is about that. I love entrepreneurship. And they needed to get the best solution. I love going toe to toe and beating the best firms at sales because I love competing and I like beating people and I like trying to win. And those are the best firms to compete against. But I learned in doing that, you were taking away a relationship that actually was better for that entrepreneur. So while it is a smart business move in partnership, it's also like the mission of the org was not being served by ripping away business from a good provider. And so, whichever angle you're looking at it from, it made a lot of sense.
Jared, this reminds me of PLX last week in Sunir Shah's session. Shout out to Sunir and AppBind. He was like, why do partnerships matter? Why do they exist? For one reason and one reason only, because customers value them. At the end of the day, all we care about is serving the customer. And if and when customers like partnerships, then we should be interested in partnerships. We shouldn't be interested in them just for the hell of it, right? And so to your point, Levi, you're like, I just want to empower small businesses. And for some of them, it means replacing their accounting firm with software. For some of them, it means supplementing their accounting firm, their services with software. And it's at the end of the day, it's that the end customer is always the one driving it. But when that end customer values those relationships, don't try to destroy them, try to work with them, right? To make it better.
That's the clippable one for the startup founder that hasn't really quite got it. Like, I don't understand these partnerships. I don't, is this complicated? Are we competing with ourselves? That's the moment right there to take from this conversation and go, look, this is very simple. That's a great way to frame that. Hindsight. So like the story of Ceteris, and looking back on it today and like these various inflection points, that brings us to somewhat modern day. And Isaac, I know you wanted to unpack this a little bit. So like having gone through this transition of like service to product to partner, so to speak, right? You're still obviously servicing customers directly. And that your story at Ceteris ended. I don't know if we want to dive into that or not, Isaac, and kind of like what you're working on. Maybe we should talk about that transition and like how you're thinking about the market today, being an entrepreneur today is, and how interoperability, partnerships, these other principles, network effects, compound interest, these other things that you don't find in your SaaS 101 playbook, but might actually should be in your SaaS 101 playbook. Isaac.
Yeah, maybe I could frame this up. This is a good, interesting way to go about it. So you spent what, 2008 to 2022 or whatever. I mean, it's a long time. You spent like 13 years going through and doing things trial and error, kind of learning things the hard way, more or less. Now, from the vantage point you're at now, after everything you've been through and learned, what's easy mode look like? What's the easy button? What's everything you've accumulated? Okay, I'm going to start a fintech company now. What's it going to look like? What's going to be how am I going to go through early product development? Who's going to be involved in that? What insights am I going to build that with? How am I going to think about go to market and distribution? Right? Like, I would just love to hear your accumulated wisdom. What's the easy button version of everything you went through in your previous company?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think a ton about it because the entrepreneurial itch wasn't solved with a 13 and a half year, session. And it's still there. So I'm all very much cognizant of how I would go about taking those lessons learned and applying them forward to build something else. So I think there's a handful of, I guess, just ideas that I think would make that a lot easier. Not a huge structure to the discussion, but first and foremost, I would start with leverage distribution and not finish with it. I wouldn't start from the ground up selling individual customers. I would find a need and I would find a channel partner, a partner of some sort that's accretive to their business to go that route. And I think I think it's better for the customer. I think it's far easier way to grow and scale. So I would do that from the. I may never get beyond that.
Do you think is that a tech integration? Like, is it a tech partner where you're building an integration on top of someone's platform, or is it more of a channel sales distribution agency partner, or is it either? Is it both? Curious how you think about that.
Yes, I think that can be both. I think that can be both. One of the second point I would have is that I think integrations are great, but I think we're moving to a more of an embedded future, to where instead of, hey, these two solutions talk nicely, I think there's a huge opportunity. It's the same unbundling and rebundling. In 2008 through 2016, it was like a unbundling of all these solutions for business software, at least. That's all I focus on. I'm a boring guy, mostly around accounting and finance. So I'm a really boring guy, but all of these things were being unbundled and done really, really, really well in one-off solutions. I feel like from 2020, forward, this rebundling is going to happen. And if I'm starting a company, I'm creating something in that bundle that doesn't exist today. And I want to deliver it by way of a platform that does exist, that is providing huge value. We're seeing embedded payments. We're seeing embedded payroll. It's here. It's not brand new, but I think a lot of embedded solutions are going to deliver a business in a box, if you will, to businesses in certain verticals and certain niches that will just be massively valuable to those entrepreneurs, those business owners, those operators.
It's interesting. I don't want to debate the topic, but I almost feel like we're at this stage where the cycles of bundling and unbundling are concurrent. Let me give you a perfect example that's really weird. Let's take a social network, aka a community, right? Let's take a popular podcast. They're basically unbundling the community features from like a Facebook in real time, right? So it's like you have like, I don't know, the All In podcast, right? Which, popular one. We popped off this episode before we hit the record button, commenting on Levi and his sweater game, much like Chamath Palihapitiya. Shout out All In. But if you think,
I'm more a Friedberg guy, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the bookkeeper's more of a science guy. Who would have thought? But if I think about that, it's like you have that thing, and then you all of a sudden like have the All In community, then you have the All In Summit, and you have this network of people that live in the comments. They wait religiously for every Friday for an episode to come out, and they wait Saturday on YouTube, like, where the heck is this episode at? And it's like you could argue that that's an unbundling happening in real time from like media that will be rebundled elsewhere later on. So like I think the cycles are now to where it's indistinguishable between bundling and unbundling, and as a result, partnering and interoperating and innovating and like being able to create value both of those ways seem more important now than ever. But I think that's more of like I think the cycles are just in compressed where they happen concurrently now. It's both. Isaac, you got a point.
You guys are so polite. I'm learning this thing like by now. I just keep interrupting, but the finger, the raise of finger is a good move.
He's got a delay, so that's why he has to.
Yeah, we had to add that because there's a slight delay on my audio. It's so funny, Levi, hearing it, because I don't think you and I have actually explicitly talked about all the things that we talked about over the years about these bundling and unbundling theories. But we both have basically come to the exact same conclusion. So I just had to look it up because I was want to make sure I wasn't misremembering. Partner Hacker Weekend on March 19th was titled The Rebundling. And I wrote about orienting to the age of rebundling. And I walked through what you just said, that the SaaS revolution was about unbundling. Instead of these giant one, size fits all solutions, you have this totally unbundled, all these point solutions in this stack, and you get to customize your stack, and all this stuff is great. But now it's like the infocalypse, as I call it, right? There's like too much information, too many choices, too many things. And we're coming into this rebundling thing. And what I said in there, which Jared maybe kind of ties together what you were saying and what Levi was saying, that the new bundle isn't built around businesses as much as communities and ecosystems. And so buyers are looking to communities, influencers, networks, ecosystems. They're looking for some place to trust so they don't have to make so many individual decisions. Thinking about the tech stack, I don't want to have to make a decision about every single item in that tech stack, but I don't necessarily want to go back to the days where I buy an annual license for a gigantic, massive solution that does everything for me. And so there's something in there that's like, I already trust these three companies, and then I'm willing to trust whoever they trust. Now I trust, let's say, whatever it is, Stripe, I trust them to do payments, or I trust Gusto to do my, basic payroll stuff. I don't want them to I don't trust them to be just as good at building something utterly unrelated to payroll in terms of product, but I do trust them to pick who's best at building that and embed it into their platform, right? So it's like a version of like rebundling, but each of the component parts are coming from people with domain expertise. And I think phase one of this is Zapier. Phase one is, here's an easy piece of duct tape that helps you start to turn individual solutions into a unified bundle. And I think we're moving from the Zapier to something much more tightly integrated, but still separate. The like, we just had a session about this, embedded iPaaS, right? As a solution for building your integrations. Instead of just doing Zapier, you're like, hey, you can actually do a embedded thing. It's still someone else's software, but it's living inside your software. And so I don't know. It's like a new version of bundling. It's kind of all over the place, but I just thought it was crazy to hear you say that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I wrote about this.
No, it's a really good point. And then just like maybe my final comment on this to kind of like bring us home. It's interesting, this phenomena, how every single category and market leader races to the bottom of the stack. What do I mean by that? Right? If you're Apple, you started as a software company, you build hardware, right? If you're in, let's say, the finance stack, you want to get down to, let's say at the processing level, you want to get to the banking level, right? If you're at the banking level, you want to get to the company formation level. That's why like Stripe is such a solid, amazing company, because they did exactly that, right? And in a lot of ways, they were an index fund on e-commerce as an index. So like, that's why there were so much money and people threw so much stuff. It's like, I can't pick e-commerce, but I know they're going to win. Why are they going to win? They're going to win because they're committed to being a solution that disappears in the background and works with everyone, right? They're not at the front end trying to be like, me, buy my stuff. Here's my ad. Have you ever seen an ad for Stripe? Hell no, you haven't. But then guess what? Every single company that's getting formed today is using what? Stripe Atlas. They didn't start with Stripe Atlas, but they went down the stack closest to those formation and key company events. And I think that should for all of us entrepreneurs or partner people looking at this next decade, really challenge us to think differently about what it means to be in this future that might be partner-led. Is like the smartest businesses in the world are going down the stack as fast as they can. And they're trying to be interoperative with everything. And the smartest entrepreneurs that, have been SaaS native, like you service to SaaS native to whatever, they're thinking about building their businesses this way. Levi, Morehouse, everybody. I don't know. The world that we're coming into is a very different world.
Can you tease what's next?
Yeah, so I think what's next is in that vein. It's this embedded business in a box is this idea that I think is huge. And I'm with you, Jared, on the unbundling and rebundling is probably concurrently. I'm a simpleton and my brain has to go with like simple models of we're in this phase now, but it's not that clean. And sectors, industries, even in the same ones, like it's definitely a cycle of just always bundling and unbundling happening all the time. I do think there's a back office solutions. If a business owner or a business can get more done in one place, that's all done really, really well. It's a time that's coming into vogue a little bit. So that's kind of where I am going to be focused, is providing technology and a solution in an embedded manner through platforms that are already providing amazing solutions, but they want to bring more into their existing ecosystem. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and I'm very excited about pursuing some opportunities in that space in the next couple of years here.
Love it.
Amazing. I can't wait to award Levi Morehouse the Partner-Led Startup of the Year award in the coming next couple of years.
2023, maybe 24. We'll see. I want to be on the list, man.
Hey, Jared has a good track record of making bold claims about what's going to happen in the near future and then coming through on those. So you never know.
Hey, I'll take it.
I make very few predictions, but they're big. They're bold. Sometimes they come true. The cap table one didn't come true much this year, Isaac, but we'll have to get to that into the next predictions episode.
What was that? What's the cap table?
Just partners finding their way into the cap table. I think that's more a function of the economy trashing completely and everything being on pause right now. But the reality is that equity for employees, investors, like everything is going to get more expensive for startup entrepreneurs. Like they're going to control less of the cap table in the future. It's just very clear to me that
Sure.
that has to be true.
Sure.
valuations are less, which means you control less of the cap table, period, full stop. There's too many solutions, you control less of the cap table. And as everyone gets addicted to this partnering, pill, well, guess what? Partnering is more expensive. And then if you have two companies you can partner with, one where it's like, I'm going to dedicate 6 years of my life to you and like help HubSpot become a $50 billion company, you should probably have some equity. It's a very simple concept. And I think in order for that to happen, there's a lot of regulatory, red tape. So it's probably a function of Web3 where that'll happen. But that one didn't quite come true this year.
So what we should build that. That's a SaaS platform that needs to happen, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Where you keep track of that. The Carta for partner equity sharing.
Call Levi. That was my original idea, was to build something in that space before Partner Hacker, but we'll cut that out of the episode. Don't let the partner people know about that.
Good ideas need to breathe,
right.
Jared, man. The best people. Execution is what it's about. Ideas, right. I've got a million, but
right now we're just focused on the content being this product. And I want to thank you, Isaac, for bringing a great product to the market. The conversation with your brother, man. And this is an awesome combo. I learned a ton. Really enjoyed it.
If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. I just learned from Jared that I am the product today, which is all good. No, this is fun, guys.
Well, I guess we should have charged you for this appearance. Then you wouldn't feel like the product.
I wouldn't have felt if it wasn't explicitly called out.
All right. Peace out, PartnerUp. We'll see y'all next time.